All right, so today I'm going to be showing you how to make a static website using AWS S3. Now, the key catch here is that this website will not be production ready, and the reason why it will not be production ready is for two reasons. When you create an AWS S3 static website, by default, you're going to have a weird domain name. It's going to be the domain name of your bucket. Now, in order to resolve this is that you're going to make a DNS association using Route 53. Route 53 is AWS's answer to domain name registration, basically. Well, not registration, domain name assignment from your IP to that domain name, which is something that you can do separately. And at the same time, you can see from this website, this is not secure. This is using HTTP. So at default, you will have your website. Everything will be working as you expect with a static website, but it will not have an HTTPS certificate. That's something that will be added later. It will not have a specific domain name because, again, that needs to be added later. So let's go ahead and start off from the start. In order to do this, you're basically going to go into AWS, and from AWS, you want to go to S3, and you want to create a new bucket that you'll use for this hosting. So let's go to the search bar, type in S3, and we'll get the amazing S3 service, which will bring us to all of our S3 buckets. So you want to go ahead and click Create Bucket. We want this to be general purpose. For the bucket name, I want it to be this specific bucket. Now, remember, when you test this, two things. This URL is going to be, your bucket name is going to be using the URL on first deploy. Also, AWS S3 buckets are unique globally. Every single user that uses S3, it's like almost like a domain name. You literally need it to be unique. So that's why I'm going to try to use this again and see what happens. So we have this bucket. We now named it, and we're going to go ahead and go through the settings. Now, ACL is disabled. Use that recommended. Now, for this piece right here, where it says block public access, it basically, what this does is that a public IP cannot access your bucket, period. It will not be publicly available on the internet. We actually want to allow this, and the reason why we want to allow this is because we want this bucket to be at least readable, and we want it to be interactable. And just for knowledge purposes, you necessarily, you can go through, right, and you can allow your specific files to be allow listed and be publicly available. But what you need to understand is that this is a static website. This static website is going to be your index.html, the resources associated with it. And if you host this on any website, people can just inspect the element and see the context of your file. So by having this bucket with only the index.html elements publicly available, it doesn't really matter, honestly. It's literally the same thing as if you hosted this with any other website. But if you start storing credentials here, if you start storing things that you think are important, that's a big no-no, and it should be a different bucket, and there should be a role associated between this static website bucket and that bucket for more security. But for now, I'm going to do block all public access. If there's a way to allow list particular files, there is going to be an update to the bucket policy to do that. We'll do that, but just keep that in mind that the information there isn't really that tenable. So we are not going to use bucket versioning. We're going to use the server-side encryption with the Amazon S3, and let's go ahead and create the bucket. And it looks like we can't because that name that I deleted, it already exists, even though I technically did delete it. So let's go ahead and make it test2. Let's go ahead and create the bucket. And there we go. Now, once the bucket is created, let's go ahead and go into our new bucket. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually go to properties. And from properties, we're going to go all the way down to the bottom where it says static website hosting. We are going to enable this, and this will actually allow us to host a static website. Now, we do not want redirects. For this case, I am going to use an index.html. For the error.html, you can create a custom error document. Basically, if your website hits a 403, 404, it'll display a specific website. You probably want to do this, but I'm not going to do this. If you leave the error.html, blank with nothing there, it'll basically use the default one Amazon provides. It doesn't look great, but it gets the job done. For redirection rules, I'm not exactly sure about this. I think this is just for general 403s or not 403s, general redirects. I'm not really sure what the use case here. I'm not a full time front-end engineer, so I'm not even sure what the benefit of that is, but we're not going to use that. We have static website hosting enabled, bucket hosting. It is technically publicly available. So let's go ahead and let's go to this website and let's see what happens. Is it going to, well, actually, let me go back. Is there a website that it gives you? Yeah, right here. So let's go there and let's see. Is it going to give us a 403 or a 404? 403 forbidden. So the reason why it's giving us a 403 forbidden is because although we did make that bucket publicly accessible, we never updated the policy for it in order to allow gets from the website. So let's do that. Let's go to permissions and let's add a bucket policy. And for this bucket policy, you can actually get it from the AWS S3 static website tutorial. And it's pretty easy for the most part. Oh, actually, that's not it. This is it. It's basically just public read, get object, allow, and then we just put our ARN, which is right here. So let's go ahead and put our ARN. And you do want to use a wildcard here. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow get access on these buckets, on this bucket and any files under it. In all reality, we could probably just do this as index.html. But if you have other websites and other documents, and if it's a new page, then you'll get 403 forbidden. So you want to do a wildcard, or you want to go in here and for every page that will ever be displayed to a user, allow list it. Again, I'm going to use wildcard because all these files are publicly available. Like if you do an index, if you do an inspect element on a website, people can see it anyway. So I don't see the benefit of doing that. Perhaps I will do that, but for the testing purposes, I don't see that as a real big issue because, again, inspect element can get that anyway. So we did that. Let's go back to the website. This should now be a 404, and there we go, 404 not found. Now what we can do is we can actually update this, and we can have it be our website. And it's actually pretty simple. All you really need to do is take your index.html, which is already existing. If you want, you can make a test index.html. You can, make a basic index.html. But I already have an index.html. I already have a description page, resources, assets. Let's upload all these things to this bucket. And all these things should now be accessible. There should be no more 403s. And let's upload it and see what ends up happening. So we uploaded those files. Our website should now be accessible. And any business logic that is here that has authentication or different things that may block information, I do have that, will still be there because that's the code you wrote. But we should see something, and we do. There we go. There's the website. There's the information. And it does not have a mechanic for displaying different tile cards by doing a get from S3. And the reason why is because I have IAM policy set up and a bucket policy set up where that's not allowed. I can allow that. I guess for the purposes of this, let's do that really quickly. Now, when I go here and I refresh, I should see tiles. And there we go. It can actually access S3. Everything works as is. It's going to need a redesign when it comes to cryptography. There's no reason to use hard-coded AWS anymore. It should be role-based access. But here's the website. The index.html is working as intended. These resources are working as intended. Because I allow listed any file under that bucket. Now when I go to this description page, it shows it. There's no real issue here. It's basically working as it intended. Pretty cool, pretty simple, and really think about it. All the steps that were here was creating a bucket, allowing it for public access, updating the bucket policy to allow contents of the bucket to be gotten publicly. From there, that was pretty much the bulk of it. And then I did my own personal business logic change of letting the bucket actually access the other data bucket. So this is pretty easy. I would definitely recommend when you're doing a static website, if you're a Google guy, do it all Google. If you're an Azure guy, do it all Azure. If you're an AWS guy, do it all AWS. Because a static website does not have a server, there's no real way for cross cloud communication. Ideally, super secure. I did update a bucket policy. I did do IAM authentication, but if push comes to shove, it is definitely crackable. And it's something that will be a lot more secure by using AWS only. Looks like this website is only missing the domain name, and other than domain name, it is missing HTTPS certification. So that'll be the next steps here, and I'll upload that video, and hopefully it'll help myself in the future and anyone else who's interested in it.